Nigel Farage now joins us, the leader of UKIP. Yeah. Mr. Farage, what do you make of these results? We've heard all night about Conservatives worried about the UKIP effect, and yet you've only got the one extra councillor.
Well, we've actually got a dozen extra councillors. The seats we've lost have been where Conservative and Labour sitting councillors have come to us, defected to us, and then lost their seats. But look, in terms of sheer numbers, we're not doing fantastically well. But what we are doing is upping our market share. Estimates vary, but we've got somewhere between 12 and 15% of the vote in the seats in which we've stood in England, and that represents a very big increase over the last few years. Our difficulty is this, that our strength is our weakness. You're as likely to find a UKIP voter in Hull as you are in Plymouth, but we're not concentrated. The Greens respect, they know exactly where they can win seats. For us, it's not like that, and I would also say, we can be a bit too simplistic about this by saying that simply the UKIP rise has all come from Conservatives. It hasn't. Some of it's come from old Labour, and some of it's also come from the Lib Dems.
Can I put to you what Baroness Warsi said last night about UKIP? She said, I put it, I think as she said it, that UKIP were fielding 14% more candidates and the BNP 14% fewer, and she went on, whether there's a kind of link, an overlap between the two parties, I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure what she was trying to say, but the implication was that in some way you were picking up BNP votes.
Yeah. I mean, she's wrong on the arithmetic because she wasn't comparing like with like, and she's wrong on the politics because we have nothing to do with the BNP, and she damn well knows that. We're furious that she behaves in that way, but we're used to it. Michael Howard called us gadflies, David Cameron called us fruitcakes, and whenever somebody senior in the Tory party abuses UKIP for its policies, it's always followed by a wave of defections, because really, the people she's insulting are Tory voters, over half of whom agree with UKIP policy. And I must say, I think she's just about the lowest grade chairman the Tory party's ever had.
David Willits, would you like to comment on that?
Well, let me say that first of all, I think Saeed Avasi is doing an excellent job as chairman. And the underlying point about the UKIP vote is that when it comes to the crucial issue of Europe, the coalition has said that there will be a referendum, if any, if ever there's any proposal of shifting further powers to Brussels. So we've dealt with that. What I think lies behind UKIP is the point we were discussing earlier on this panel. It's much more to do with disenchantment, with the tough decisions that parties have to take when you're in government and you're inheriting such a large deficit that has to be sorted out. And I thought actually there, when Nigel Farage said that he was taking support from a range of parties, this is the disenchantment with politics that the mainstream politicians have to address.
But the disenchantment is with Europe, presumably, because that's the main plank of policy that UKIP puts forward and people understand about.
On Europe, I think we have been very robust. We've both passed legislation to give the referendum lock if there were to be ever a proposal for a transfer of powers to Brussels. We saw David Cameron negotiating very robustly in Europe. Right. So, as I say, I actually think this is less Europe. It's more to do with that phenomenon that you can see everywhere of having to take tough decisions because the government, as Labour famously said, had run out of money. We inherited a situation where the government had run out of money.
Nigel Farage, very briefly, so you're just picking up disaffections, nothing to do with your policy on Europe.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Willits. You know, your Prime Minister gave a cast-iron guarantee he'd give us a referendum. He's broken that promise. And remember, UKIP is about far more than Europe. We're about mass immigration, damaging Britain at this time. We're about the idea that green taxes and building windmills all over our country is achieving no good. And we're the one party prepared to say Britain's small businesses need some help. So we are about far more than Europe and far more than disaffection. When people vote UKIP, they know what they're getting.
And when you say mass immigration is hurting Britain, people will hear the voice also of the BNP when you say that. What do you exactly mean by it?
I think it's outrageous to say that any intelligent discussion on immigration is somehow an extremist thing. The fact that, and we discussed it on Question Time last week, the fact that figures this week confirm that 20% of social housing in London has gone to foreign-born migrants is something that is worrying people. And to have a massive oversupply in the unskilled labour market with huge numbers coming from Eastern Europe at a time of 21% youth unemployment just doesn't make sense.
Nigel Farage, thank you very much for joining us.